So today's webinar, we're delighted to welcome Greg Arthur, co-founder of Lifeology. Greg's professional path has been varied, providing him with business and project management experience, leading him to set up Lifeology, a transformational coaching business, with his best friend. Greg is a coach, mentor, and change agent working in companies and with individuals to help improve self-esteem and productivity. He neutralizes stigmas and navigates people through change. Additionally, he offers his time to peer mentor people living with HIV. Greg is a keen runner and swimmer, a casual yogi, and loves a good book. You will also catch him often out of London as he feeds his curiosity about culture and the world through travel. This webinar is generously sponsored by Qualsy, previously known as Web Creator Suite. Web Creator Suite have generously sponsored a number of our events over the last few years. They relaunched last month as Qualsy with a ton of new features to make research easy, affordable, powerful, and successful. The platform supports all your synchronous project needs, including diary tasks, US research, video blogging, international projects, long-term communities, and much, much more. Use the QR code here or follow the link to claim your exclusive ICG discount for Qualsy. If you miss these now, they'll be on the recording of this webinar on the ICG website afterwards, or just come to me and I'll give you them. Qualsy are passionate about quality insight and love working with quality researchers. They look forward to making friends with more ICG members and helping you to deliver more for your clients. Before I hand over to Greg, here are our next webinars to note down in your diaries. Don't forget that we are able to offer great value sponsorship opportunities for each of those webinars, which is open to ICG members as well as others. Sponsorship normally costs £100 for a lot of exposure on our website, mailers and social media, and of course on the day. Please contact me if you are interested in finding out more. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Greg now.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thanks for that introduction. Yes, I'm Greg Arthur. Let's see if I can get the technology right, and there you have it. Right. So yeah, my business Lifeology is all about transformation through courage, consciousness, and a sense of humor. So for today's webinar, I chose the topic of the sense of humor that we need in order to deal with change. Change is inevitable. It happens all around us. We like to, as human beings, we like to try keep things constant for ourselves. But what we're actually doing is resisting the natural change. Our bodies are changing with every day. Nature around us is changing. Even physical structures like buildings are changing, getting older, aging. And it's about accepting that. And how do we accept that? And how do we move forward with that and appreciate the change that is happening around us? So I'm going to start off by talking through a little bit more about my story and how I got to where I am, because it'll come through in our talk how important that is. While I'm talking, you'll see that there's a lovely painting there, painted by Tasman, who is the daughter of a good friend of mine in South Africa, where I was born and grew up. And so the left part of the skyline might not be familiar to you. That is the Johannesburg skyline. And in the middle is the Nelson Mandela Bridge. And then it bridges very neatly to the London skyline, which shows my transition moving from Johannesburg to London back in 2016. This was given to me on my departure, and it's something that's very, very special to me. But going back a bit, when I started university, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life, and I think that's familiar to a lot of people. And so I started a BSc in building and completed that building science degree, went into construction. There I did project management, and I was obliged to work for at least 4 years because of the scholarship that I was on. But I hated every moment. And every day I knew that this was not what I wanted to do. I managed to eventually get out of that industry and move into corporate social responsibility, which I did for 8 years. And there were highs and lows there. It was great to work with people, but eventually the passion started to fade. And I was waking up in the morning, not really wanting to get up or go to work. Things were purely frustrating for me. I was not getting any happiness, any joy, any fulfillment anymore. In the meantime, I was talking to my best friend about some business ideas, and eventually I woke up one morning and I just felt like it was time. It was time to move on. It was time to resign and to start this business. I called her. She was a little shocked by the news. I went in and I resigned that day. I did have a fairly long handover period, so there was a little bit of a buffer there. But all along, that was back in 2009, and all along, Jodine and I, knew that we knew what we wanted to achieve with Lifeology. We had a vision, and it is that byline of transformation through courage, consciousness, and a sense of humor. And that's also where the name came from, the study of life, Lifeology. But we didn't really have the best business plan. In fact, I don't think we really had a business plan. And we put together some products and started to self-promote. And that led us to actually be quite active on social media. And Jodine is particularly good at that, as she was self-promoting on social media, that we eventually started a social media business on the side. And that grew in great leaps and bounds. But what we found was that it was not what we really wanted to achieve with Lifeology. So lots of shifts and changes happened in between, but then economic and uncertainty in South Africa and personal aspirations to live somewhere else in the world caused me to decide to move to the UK in 2016. I arrived just after the Brexit vote. So I arrived into a time of tremendous change here in the UK. And I know that it's something that a lot of you have had to work through and deal with too, because you work with European clients, customers, and have been impacted by the changes that Brexit has brought along. When I moved here, I didn't have any work to do. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a contract, but I was allowed to move here because, fortunately, through my father, I was a citizen already. But I decided I wanted to come here and I wanted to give it the best shot. It was something I felt was right for me. And I started to network and eventually found a change management contract with a large building products company based in the Netherlands. And I worked on that for 2.5 years. And halfway through, I realized that another dream of mine had come true. And that was that I was working across Europe. Something I really always wanted to do and experience the different cultures of Europe. And through this contract, I was able to do that. Then the pandemic came along, another change that we've all had to face in business. It's impacted some of us more than others, but we had to close our social media business in South Africa. All of our clients were in the exhibition industry, which completely collapsed as COVID took hold. And so we were forced in some ways to refocus on what we really want to do with Lifeology. And so we built our e-learning and e-commerce store on our site, and we've again focusing on mentoring, coaching, teaching individuals so that they can become more familiar with who they are, so that they can navigate better through the world and through the organizations that they work in, or indeed that they own. Spoken a lot about direction. And hopefully when you read this quote, you can hear Diana Ross in the background. Do you know where you're going to? Do you like the things that life is showing you? And I just wanted to focus on that second line, because those feelings that you get are so important. When you just know that something is not right for you, it's not working out for you, and then change is required, it is an important first step to realizing that something needs to shift. And what a lot of us don't realize is that if you don't make the change yourself, you will eventually become so miserable that the change becomes forced on you. And so it's so important for setting your direction. It's just how you feel. And that's exactly what led me to quit my job and start my own business, start the social media division, take up change management even, which I had no experience in until I started doing it. Selling everything up, moving here to the UK. It was all spurred on by this feeling that I'm not happy with what life is showing me. I need to shift. And we say that change is painful, growth is painful, but I think if we all analyze it, nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. So how do you set this compass? How do you set a direction? What do you aim for? Very simple answer is to aim for happiness. But in order to aim for happiness, you need to understand what that means. You need an understanding of who you are and what makes you happy, what brings fulfillment, what brings you joy. And then that compass can be set and say, right, I'm going to follow how I feel to move towards happiness all along. We're taught in the business world that you've got to set goals, you've got to have your short-term goals, your medium-term goals, your long-term goals. I think with this ever-changing world, we've all realized that especially long-term goals are pointless. You set them up today and tomorrow, everything that you depend on to achieve that goal has shifted, or something has shifted, which means that it's no longer achievable. And you're just setting yourself up for a string of disappointments. And so we say, focus on happiness, focus on a vision for what you want, and make it broad, make it feeling related, make it intrinsic, make it internal, make it true to yourself. And then you can set daily goals. As you wake up, you can go, right, this is what I need to achieve to take the next step. Also, medium-term goals can also work, but being prepared to face the fact that you may have to shift and change those goals in order to reset that compass. But it does mean, though, that if happiness is north, you can travel east, you can travel west, you can travel south, but always that compass, that internal compass, is pointing in the same direction and giving you the nudge to carry on towards that truth of happiness and joy. We noticed this pattern in ourselves going through the changes that we were experiencing. And so we came up with what we call the foundation. It's the foundation of all our transformation processes. And the first step is to be conscious, to be aware of what you're doing, how you're acting, how you're reacting on a daily basis. Listen to yourself, listen to what the internal voices that you're telling yourself, and keeping track of those. So what I often recommend to clients here is to start keeping a journal, whether it's personal, whether you choose to write about what happened work-wise, but just start to record consciously on a daily basis what happened in your life, how it affected you, how you felt about what happened. That will start to give you an indication of what brings you that joy and fulfillment. And if you don't know yet what that happiness is, it'll start to point those out to you. Another thing that some people like to do is a gratitude exercise. At the end of every day, sit down and find something that you're grateful for, especially on really tough days. That is a really good indicator of what you're looking for in each day. And listen to those you trust. Make sure you have an inner circle of people whose whose opinions you really value. They will also give you indicators because they watch you and they can see the moods, they can see what affects you. Take note of those as well. Once you've done that, you're then in a better position to tell yourself the truth. And here the big question is why? Why am I acting this way? Why am I reacting this way? What is causing this within me? How have I held myself back? Why am I stopping myself from doing the things that I really enjoy? What are the factors here? And some people come up with things like, well, there's no money in what I want to do. I have a family to support, and my partner is not happy with this that I want to do with my life. Those sorts of answers are so important because they then determine what you do with the next step, where you make it about you. And that's taking responsibility for the role that you play and what you can do to change it. And here, sometimes this is where some tough choices come in, where you can see that perhaps the situation you've put yourself in is not your truth, and it's not actually a scenario that you can make better without some dramatic change. I give this severe example, but it's often not a dramatic change that is required. But we do get those clients who realize at this point that perhaps they're in the wrong relationship, or a relationship with the wrong person, they're in the wrong industry, they're the wrong job. Those sorts of things can be quite something for people to sit with and deal with. But for a lot of people, it's something small that needs to shift. So then you can finally move on to that next step, which is to do something different. And exactly what that something different is can be very small. We often suggest that you make a very small change, especially if it's the first time that you're braving this process. May it do just one small thing different. And what I like to do here is I often distract myself from the fact that I might be doing something different. So I'll do it, but then I will take my mind off it and go and do something completely unrelated in order to not then think about what the consequences might be. Because none of us actually know what the consequences will be. It's only the voices in our head, those self-limiting beliefs, that tell us what those consequences will be. And often it's quite arrogant for us to actually think that we know what the change will bring about. But prototype something, just do something. Then you can live in integrity. That fifth step is then about following how this makes you feel. What are you experiencing as a result of this change that you've implemented? Taking notes, and then you can start to move into the be conscious stage. So it is a cycle, it's an ever repeating cycle in order to get yourself back on track, to follow that compass, to realize where your north is, and to reorientate yourself in that direction. A lot of this takes faith, right? So what does faith mean? What does the word faith mean to you? Well, we've actually put together an acronym around faith to help you to understand exactly what this is. The very broad definition is that it's believing in something that cannot be experienced in a physical form. That's faith. So it's something that you sense, your sixth sense. So that's why we like to talk again about that feeling that you get. So how we define the F? The F is for focus. Now, focus is not about pushing yourself to do something. It's not about forcing. We don't think you should be forcing anything. But focus can also be to actually stop, to sit in your truth, everything you know about yourself, everything you understand about yourself, your strengths, and then do. So it's taking that step back and refocusing on what you really want to achieve. Acceptance. we create expectations all the time. When we do something different, we expect things to happen in a certain way. When we take any action, and then it's dealing with the disappointment that often takes up so much time. That expectation is born out of a lack of faith in the process, and just letting things flow and understanding that I take responsibility for that step. I take responsibility for making that change. But there are things outside of my control that may actually happen that I have that and that I've just got to be comfortable with. So I take responsibility for where I am and accept it. The intention, what do you intend from this faith? What do you intend to achieve? You often we have our inherent traits and patterns. So important to understand those, to be self-aware so that we can answer that question, why, and in that emotional response, understand whether it is the intention is constructive or destructive for ourselves. And then to trust the process. We call it the trinity of trust. It's trusting yourself, trusting your universe, whatever that may be, depending on your belief system, that would be different. And then trusting those around you. In order to trust yourself, you've got to know your intuition. You've got to be in touch with your intuition. You've got to know what it feels like, what it means to you. And that takes that self-awareness I keep talking about. Trusting your universe. So whether it is something, whether it is something beyond you or something within you, depending on your belief system, that strengthens. And it's important that you strengthen faith in order to go with that process, and then to trust those around you. That's a combination of intuition and faith, because it's the intuition that keeps those who are good for you around you, and then having faith that their feedback is important and they are part of your journey because you have chosen for them to be a part of your journey. And the H in faith is happiness. When you just feel happiness, find the joy in every moment. And I know there are some times when I'm talking to a client and they say, I cannot find any joy in this. This is the most miserable experience I've ever had. And I get that, and I empathize with that, and I feel that. I feel the same thing at times. And I will sit with it and I'll honor it, but then I will do one of a few things in order to lift myself out of that. And sometimes it's just looking at myself in the mirror and smiling. Funnily enough, that seems to bring the humor that sits within me out, and I start to see that actually what I'm taking so seriously, what I'm so miserable about, is maybe not that important. Just that smile can sometimes break that pattern that I've created in my head, that thought pattern. And another thing I use is music, and I think a lot of people use music that can really shift your mood. And it's so tempting when you're having a rotten time to choose some music that perpetuates that. It's a strange human condition that we like to sit in that misery sometimes. You can choose to do that, but I urge you in those times when you are feeling miserable to put on the happiest music you know, something that perhaps you like dancing to, and to get up and just dance around the room. That can be so amazing. On the contract in the Netherlands, I worked with two colleagues who would do that in the office. They had no qualms that to on a really bad day when things were just not going our way, to turn the music up in the office and to just dance around. And it did. It broke the spell. It lifted everyone's mood. It's incredible what we can do with a simple act like that. And to let you in on a secret, I did for quite a few years. This isn't a secret, but I did cabaret. So where the secret is that I often will listen to music in public, and in my mind I will be picturing this enormous flash mob, and that really seems to lift my mood when I'm feeling down. So it can be something that you do externally, really get the body moving, and there are benefits. Research shows there's benefits to getting the body moving, but it also can be something private and something that you just do for yourself to remind yourself that actually things don't have to be that serious. And so here, still focusing on happiness, it's there's this lovely list, which is not my own. It came from a blog called The Good Men Project, and it's 10 things happy people understand. But it plays into everything that I've already mentioned and puts it into a lovely list of 10 things. They're comfortable with uncertainty. They know that they can't guess what's going to happen next, but they are okay with that because they are comfortable with what they're carrying in their emotional backpack that will carry them through. They know that they've been through enough in the past, that they have enough experience. They do not rely on others for happiness. Or yes, exactly that. So they know that they're in charge of their own happiness and that they can shift their own mood. They constantly bless their life, and what that means is to do something that you know brings you joy on a regular basis. They keep their inner circle small. I spoke about those people who you respect, whose opinions you respect. Keep those people small. You don't have to tell the whole world everything that's going on in your life, because for everyone, because of duality, for everyone who believes in you, there will be somebody who won't believe. And that's not a reflection of you. That's just because they're seeing you through their lens, through their perception, and they don't want to express any belief in you. And so keep that circle small and share those special, intimate details with those people in order to get that affirmation, which as social beings, it's so important. We often go and search for it in the wrong places. They're driven by intrinsic rewards. So they don't have to receive something from someone in order to be happy. They know that purely through what they're doing, they can derive happiness because they understand what brings them happiness. They show up for life. And this always reminds me of the story of Richard Branson's success. He always emphasized how he just showed up. Sometimes he had no clue what he was doing. He didn't know why he was meeting with someone, but he showed up, because you never know where opportunity lies. And that, especially if you're struggling to understand what brings you happiness, this is so important. If you've got the right circles, the right people around you, and then you just show up for the opportunities that are provided, you might indeed start to get a better idea of what you're looking for, even if it's through a process of elimination, where you start to realize what you definitely don't want. They don't have self-limiting beliefs. This is a big one. We all have a story in our head that's playing, that's telling us every reason why something's not possible. That really can make you so miserable. They don't compare their journey to others. We've all heard this 1,000 times. Don't compare yourself to others. It isn't easy to do. And I know I definitely am comparing myself to others at times. Especially social media can really play into this. And it's not about the platform itself. It's about how we choose to use it. And I don't know why, for some reason, I when I'm feeling like I haven't achieved what I want to achieve, I turn to social media and start scrolling through the feed. And then obviously all I'm going to see is all the lovely things that other people choose to share with the world about what their lovely lives. Not going to make me feel any better. So it's about personalizing the journey and reminding myself what I want to achieve, and that it may be very different to those around me, even those in my close inner circle. Happy people also concentrate on what is instead of what could have been, right? No regrets. It is what it is, and everything that I have achieved and where I'm at now is as a result of every choice that I have made in my life, some conscious, some unconscious, but I've still made choices all along. And then those people also transform through pain, pain is inevitable. So this happiness is not about positivity, this positivity movement that has been around with us for so long, where people like tell you don't have these negative thoughts because then you will manifest that negativity. That's not really embracing what life is about. There are painful experiences. The very fact that we all die at some point is a painful experience because it means that people close to us, we will lose. Pain is inevitable, but how we deal with that pain is so important. Such a learning experience to go through those difficult moments. And here to emphasize, oh, it's playing, that's great. Okay, so to emphasize everything that I've spoken about, I just want to share this short 5-minute video. I hope we've got enough time, and then I'm done. It is in Greek, but there are English subtitles. So if you're battling to understand, and I hope that you will be able to hear the sound at least because the music is beautiful, but don't listen to the language unless you understand Greek, but read the subtitles.
Μια φορά και έναν καιρό, σε μια χώρα μακρινή, ζούσε ένα αγόρι, διαφορετικό από όλα τα άλλα. Τον έλεγαν ευτύχη. Όλα κυλούσαν ήρεμα στη ζωή του, ώσπου κάποτε, πριν πολλά χρόνια, ένα γεγονός έγινε η αιτία για να δει τη ζωή με άλλα μάτια. Τότε του αποκαλύφθηκε ένα μεγάλο μυστικό. Η λύση σε ένα γρίφο που οι άνθρωποι προσπαθούσαν να λύσουν εδώ και χιλιετίες. Το αποκαλύφθηκε το νόημα της ζωής. Ο ευτύχης τώρα ξέρει πως η ευτυχία δεν είναι τίποτε άλλο από στιγμές, μικρές, ασήμαντες, αδιόρατες στιγμές. Όπως να σε σκεπάζει κάποιος μέσα στη νύχτα. Να ονειρεύεσαι. Να ξυπνάς από το τραγούδι ενός σπουργητιού. Πάνω σε φρεσκοπλημμένα μυρωδάτα σεντόνια. Δίπλα σε κάποιον που αγαπάς. Να τον αγγίζεις. Να τον μυρίζεις. Να αισθάνεσαι το ζεστό νερό να πέφτει με δύναμη στο πρόσωπό σου. Το σπίτι να γεμίζει μυρωδιά από φρεσκοψημένο κέικ. Να κρατάς μια ζεστή κούπα όταν έξω κάνει κρύο. Να κόβεις ένα λεμόνι κατευθείαν από το δέντρο σου. Να νιώθεις το δροσερό φθινοπορεινό άνεμο να σου χτυπά το πρόσωπο. Να αισθάνεσαι ελαφρύς και άδειος από σκέψεις. Μέσα στην απόλυτη ηρεμία κάτω από το νερό. Να συνεχίζεις να κάνεις πράγματα που έκανες μικρός. Όταν όλοι τρέχουν κάτω από τις ομπρέλες, εσύ να στέκεσαι κάτω από τη βροχή. Να περπατάς ξυπόλυτος πάνω στο φρεσκοβρεμένο δροσερό γρασίδι. Να βγάζεις βόλτα ένα μπαλόνι. Να πιστεύεις σε πράγματα που δεν μπορούν να εξηγηθούν, πως μια πασχαλίτσα είναι ένας καλός ιονός. Να μη φοβάσαι. Να κάνεις πράγματα που δεν ταιριάζουν στην ηλικία σου. Να ακούς τα κύματα να σκάνε στην ακτή. Να νιώθεις τη γη κάτω από τα πόδια σου. Να μη σκέφτεσαι τίποτα. Να σου ψιθυρίζει κάποιος ένα μυστικό. Να βλέπεις ένα ηλιοβασίλεμα ακόμα και όταν οι άλλοι ξέρουν πως δεν μπορείς να το δεις.
Thanks to Konstantin Pelarios for that, but to me it summarizes a lot of what I have spoken about today. Beautiful, beautiful video. So just to finish off, also from another video you can find on YouTube, it's the Sunscreen Speech by Baz Luhrmann. And here he just talks about doing simple things, not to worry about anything in the future, because you actually don't know what the future brings. We naturally do worry, and I understand that, especially when we have dependents. We worry about what the future holds. But as he points out, that's actually not very effective at all. The real troubles are the things that never cross your mind, that blindside you at 4 p.m. on some idle Tuesday. So, but do one thing every day that scares you, because that prepares you for those shifts, for that change as you go through life. And I think later on he says, but trust me on always using sunscreen. Thank you very much. If you are interested in what I have said to you today, you are welcome to go onto our website in the top right-hand corner there. That's our web address, lifeology.biz. You can also drop me an email, greg@lifeology.biz, and that's also my contact telephone number. If you would like to discuss something with me, there is the option on the website of booking what we call an exploratory consult. It is free of charge, and it's a half an hour where we can chat and we can look at where you are, and I can talk through and recommend what we might be able to do for you. Thanks very much. Are there any questions?
I've got one, Greg, to
Yeah.
start. It's really about children and how any of this learning can be taught to them or applied to them. Thinking about my own kids who are 8 and 10, it just feels a shame to me that we're all adults at this point and we're learning about this stuff. And in an ideal world, I would love my kids to have more of an awareness at an early stage. Is it possible?
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is I recommend that you never discourage the innocence with which children approach life, because that innocence still sits within us as adults, because we were all children. We know what that means, and that is to you approach things like you've never done it before. So if a child approaches a jungle gym, they don't think about the last time they fell off it, the dangers of falling off it, that they might cut their finger on it. They don't think of that. They just look at it and go, that's fun. That's something I'm going to enjoy. To encourage that while obviously teaching responsibility. So try not as far as possible to shift your fears onto them. But I think even bigger than that is to live by example. I always say that you've got to start with yourself. If you want to affect change in the lives of others, you've got to start with yourself, because they learn from you. Your children are always learning from you. As much as I always thought I would never turn out like my parents, I am in a lot of ways exactly like my mom and dad, both negative and positive traits. And that's not because of anything they said directly to me, but it's because I watched how they behaved, how they reacted in certain circumstances. And then if you're not getting it right yourself, because you can only judge yourself, you can also make sure that there are open channels of communication and moments where you can actually sit down and talk about what happened. And find fun ways to do that. Some parents and uncles, in my case, we can sometimes get into the habit of lecturing. A kid wants to hear a lecture, but they want to understand where you're at, or how it happened to you, something that they can relate to, and then hopefully with a fun outcome, which is what a lot of what I said today was about.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Got a few. Oh, we got comments in the chat. Thank you.
I think Kath had one. Yes, Kath?
Yeah, this is a mean this is a mean question, because I want to challenge you a bit on everything you say. Totally makes sense, Greg, and thank you. But I suppose one thing that was going through my mind was that I know somebody who I greatly admire, and they have a difficult life because they put other people before themselves an awful lot, and they're in a position of authority, so they use that in really positive ways to help people, and they see an awful lot of struggle and difficulty. And I feel like that person doesn't have a lot of personal, not a lot of giggles in their life, not a lot of joy, probably quite tired, but the good that they're doing in the world is way bigger. Like, I always look at her and think, there's no way I could do that, and I don't want to, but I'm so glad you do. So I think you can see where my challenge is going. It's like, not sure she would describe herself as happy, not sure she wants to be happy. And so I just wanted to ask you about that, because I think she's an incredibly positive person and she's doing a huge amount of good. It's just not necessarily for herself. And I'm interested in your thoughts on that, because I don't think she qualifies on your personal happiness thing, but I still think she's a very positive role model in some ways. Not that I could be her.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, Kat. Obviously we are approaching this from your perception of this person and what they're going through, and perhaps they do find their happy moments. In fact, maybe helping people brings them that happiness, because a lot of us who do charity work, we're not actually doing it. If you drill deep down, we're not doing it for us, for others. We're doing it for ourselves. We're doing it because of what it brings us, because otherwise we wouldn't continue doing it. So this person must be getting something out of it. But a lot of, if they're not happy and they are doing all this good in the world, we can investigate that through their personality trait blueprint, because in their personality traits, there must be something that drives them to help others. Because it's so inherent, that should not change. But perhaps there's an element of their personality that they have pushed into the shadow. Often what sits in our shadow, which is the part of ourselves we choose to ignore, it's not all negative. Some of the times it's our strengths, it's very positive. So we would work with that person to just explore their intentions behind doing the work, making sure that they're taking time for themselves, and do they understand what brings them happiness? And perhaps if it is doing stuff for others, then they can continue, and that will bring them joy.
Thank you.
There's a question, Simon. Do you want me to read that out, or did you want to say it, Simon, your question? You're on mute.
Off mute there. Okay, I'm off mute. Yeah, I'll just talk through it. No, it's just no, I thought that was great. Thanks, Greg. And I actually went through a sort of change thing myself when I was in my 20s, and I completely changed career, and it was the best thing I ever did, and it's how I ended up being a qualitative researcher, which I now do. However, I probably hit a phase where I would like to be looking at another set of changes I need to make in my life. But being 51 now and having kids and the family set up and everything else, you do hit that barrier where it's just so much harder to make changes because it has impacts on other people around you. And I guess that was my question as to how, much of life now is about sort of balancing my interests against you know, what my loved ones need. And that's where I get stuck often. And that's the big, well, I can't really change much because I feel like I'm within these quite tight parameters set by the needs of the people around me. Do you have any sort of approach for middle-aged people in this kind of situation?
Well, I think it's important to listen to what the words that you use there, because it is what they say in psychology is a self-limiting belief. By thinking that you are trapped because of your situation, it can stop you from making changes. But maybe the changes that you're envisioning are, or how you need to implement those changes, you've made too big for yourself, which you think is then going to have an impact on others. So it's breaking it down to the what are the small steps that need to happen in order for you to perhaps find more time for yourself, or to find time to do a hobby that really brings you joy. It's little changes that can have a huge impact that won't necessarily have a negative impact on those around you. That's something that you can definitely work on, but be cautious of just telling yourself that story that stops you from doing anything. We all do that, and it's something that we really need to flag in ourselves all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Though I probably I like to make quite radical changes when I do change, and then that becomes a barrier because it's too big to actually do.
Yeah, because if you look around, there are loads of examples. I'm trying to think of one myself, but people who have made big changes later on in their life, and they're well-known individuals. I'm sure you could research this and find some great examples. They have families, they have dependents, but they have changed their life around. It is possible and to take those you love with you on the journey.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that.
Sure.
We've got one from Mary. Mary, unless you want to speak, I'll say it. Presumably the part that holds people up are the self-limiting beliefs, and those can be quite a major hurdle. How do you tackle those?
Okay, well, viewing self-limiting beliefs as a major hurdle is in itself a self-limiting belief, isn't it? It's often, I'm going to make the same point because it is relevant here. It's often not as big a hurdle as we think it is. That's why when earlier on I said that I sometimes distract myself, because I definitely do that. When I come up with something that I want to achieve, something I want to create, all I see is this massive hurdle that I've got to get over. And even when I break it down and go, okay, I'm going to make it a small goal, there's still this voice in my head saying, oh, this is too big. You're not going to achieve it. What I've got to do is set that intention, make sure that it is clear that it is something that I want to achieve, and then distract that part of my brain that has that voice. And then all of a sudden I am halfway to where I wanted to be, and then that brain kicks back in. It's an interesting experience. But there are loads of tactics that you can use to distract the voice and just do something anyway. Prototype. I have huge admiration for people who put physical products out there that you can actually touch and feel, and they have no idea how the world is going to receive it, but they invest money, they invest time, they produce these products and send them out into the world, and sometimes they completely flop and disappear, and no one ever talks about them ever again. But at least they tried, and now they know that that's not going to work. But if they had that voice in their head going, oh, people are not going to like this, most of the things that we use today would not have existed. That creativity needs that freedom to just go out there and just try it anyway.
Kirsten, do you want to say your comment?
Yes, it was just picking up on the discussion, which is often I don't think it is a matter of success or failure, really. It's just trying. So I decided I wanted to write a novel. And if you say a novel, it's just so big and scary. But I thought maybe I can write a page and see what happens. And if I stop, it doesn't matter. I've tried that, and it might be interesting, it might not. And then, oh, maybe I could make that into a chapter, or maybe I could make that into a book. So you're kind of doing it before the fear can take over, if that makes sense. But all the time I was writing this book, I thought if it never gets published, it actually doesn't matter because I've learned a lot from doing it anyway. So yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say success and failure is all relative, isn't it? You know, how do you judge that? Although the goalposts do change as you get into something. And then I kind of found an answer to Simon's question. I didn't mean to change my life, really. I just started writing a novel, and then suddenly I was a novelist with contracts, and in the sort of whole publishing process, it almost became like a job. And my income kind of plummeted because you don't earn as that much from being a novelist, unfortunately. But it was kind of okay, if you know what I mean. With less income, it's just kind of worked. Although I am back here now, but it can be done.
That's an amazing story, Kirsten. Thank you for that. Yeah. That's it is about just trying it anyway and seeing where it goes. And I love that you had that pleasant surprise. Yeah. And it's and not focusing on the outcome. That's also a great point that you make. Thank you.
Well, it was the journey is the success, isn't it? Yeah, in a way.
Yeah. It's important that you wanted to experience that creative process for yourself. That seemed to be the what you wanted to achieve. It's what you started out with, and you got all these other returns, which were great.
Yeah.
And you could make
and
choices
loads
as
of
you go.
rejections as well. You know, I'm giving you the top line, loads of rejections, but yeah.
But as you say, you were not doing it for that reason. You were doing it for yourself first and foremost. That is one of the primary points of experiencing that happiness, because that you have way more control over how you feel about something than how someone else feels about something that you've produced. Definitely. Thanks, Kirsten.
Anybody else?
I have a quick question about social media, and you made the point about.
Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt because I think Clara's trying to speak and has been, but we can't hear you, Clara. Like your mic is open, but we can't hear you. Do you want to put it in the chat and then Lucy can? Sorry, Kirsten, I could just see Clara's lips moving.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's strange, isn't it?
It is weird. Sometimes it happens when you've got when you've been on Zoom or something else, and your camera's being taken over by. So it might be something to do with that. I don't know.
So while we're waiting for Clara, do you want to ask your social media question, Kirsten?
Yeah, it was just a quick question about. I think you mentioned oversharing on social media, and I think I am a big oversharer on social media. And yeah, so what would you say the kind of limits to what you should share? I mean, as a writer, you're encouraged to kind of have a presence on social media and not to make it about plugging your book. So you kind of give a bit of yourself. But where would you say that becomes detrimental to, I don't know, yourself and your life?
Well, yeah, that varies from person to person. Where social media has an impact on me is actually from consumption, not sharing. It's what I see that can be damaging to my mood. But yes, you do give a good example, and that I think relates to what's you have your inner circle. You have those people who you truly trust and respect. Those are the people you should be sharing perhaps the things that you're a little bit unsure about yourself, that you are a bit delicate about. You still want to get feedback on, but it's about knowing yourself, because if you're going to throw that out into the world, as I mentioned, for everyone who loves your work, there'll be someone who hates it. And are you prepared for that? If you are, then go ahead and share, and then you're not going to get too upset by the comments that come back in return. But if you feel that that's not what you need at this point, then don't. So it's really about where you are in yourself, and that changes because we're talking about self-esteem, and so all of us, our self-esteem constantly is riding a wave, and it's something we need to respect as part of the human experience of emotions and how we deal with the world around us.
Can I just say on that point, the bit in the video, the Greek video about sometimes not acting your age, which I love, and my boys always accuse me of not acting my age. But with that, Kirsten, sometimes you just got to say, sod it, what makes you happy? And who cares? And if you get a little bit of negativity, that's being self-conscious. And maybe part of the learning for me has been worry less about those outcomes.
Yeah.
And just go for like your book, because we're also worried about what others think, that we procrastinate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I bung stuff out and I don't particularly care what people think. And most people are lovely, and the few that aren't, if I can learn something from it, then fine. Otherwise, that's just their opinion. But it was just, if I didn't know if Greg was saying it was a bad thing to share a lot on social media.
No.
Okay.
I'm sure it benefits you as an author. You're quite right.
Yeah.
It's important to get your opinion out there because of your pursuits. Good to see you again, Nick. Thanks for your comment.
Just before we draw it to a close, Anne saying just to go, but she really enjoyed it. Thank you. Clara's point. She said, thinking of older people, helping them see and experience small pleasures and happiness. In most cases, they are forgotten, and there is a lot we can do. I think it says and help them change. I think it might be and help them change.
Yeah. Look, you're talking, Clara. You're talking about helping others, and that is also a great trait. If it's something that gives you that joy and fulfillment. What we do, we actually have quite a few older clients who are now retired, don't know what to do with their lives because they gave too much of their lives up to, and they chose to do this, to their family or perhaps their partner's pursuits or children's pursuits, and now they find themselves, as you say, feeling a little bit more alone. And it's about helping those people to reconnect with who they are and what brings them joy. And here I love using the example of my very own mom, who used to love dancing and then had 2 children and didn't have time for dancing, gave it all up, but then back in, I think she was in her late 60s, she took up tap dancing once again, and it brought her great joy. And I think it's to remind older people that this whole belief that we have in society that once you reach a certain age you need to stop doing things is nonsense. Obviously there's some physical limitations in some people, but others can actually do those things again, or find another way of getting that joy and fulfillment through perhaps a similar activity. Thanks, Clara.
Right, thank you. We're at 12 noon now, so I just wanted to say a massive thank you, Greg, for your time. It was really interesting and inspiring, and it looks like everybody found it so. So thank you so much from the ICG. We will share the recording with everybody very soon. So hope everybody has a lovely rest of their day. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lucy.